Now, as per Origin 1, we will look back at Origin in just a second, and then we'll get on to last night's comprehensive victory by the South Sydney Rabbitohs. We'll look at all the issues that came out of Game 1 of State of Origin, plus your thoughts, Game 2 of State of Origin, plus your thoughts on the forums. We'll talk about the New South Wales Cup coming up a bit later on today, and also we'll preview the rest of the round of 16 action. And you can get in contact with us at any time, radio@LeagueUnlimited.com. That's radio@LeagueUnlimited.com. But let's start with what has been really the main talking point of the week, and it was Wednesday night's State of Origin win by Queensland by 26 points to 6. Look, we'll talk about individual players in a moment. I've got a few things to say about a few people, but really, Nathan, Queensland, they're way too good. They came out, they scored within the first 2 minutes, that try to Sam Thaiday, and even then, even though it was only 4-6-0, you thought they were going to be very, very hard to stop, and they were. I mean, New South Wales, I think, were pretty lucky only to be 14-0 down at half-time, and I think they probably would have maybe gone into half-time with some confidence that they managed to stem the flow of points. They had their chances, New South Wales. As I said, we'll get on to a few individual players in a moment, but Queensland, they were just way too good, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. New South Wales were never in the game. After the first game, before the second game, everyone talked about the fast start. Everyone knew it was coming, but New South Wales weren't prepared. They conceded 14 points, as Queensland did in the first game. Don't forget that. It was a mirror image of that. And the Blues, they never got back into it. As you said, Thaiday scored in the second minute there, and then they just opened the floodgates from then on in, and New South Wales never got back into the game.
Rob, it was interesting because I suppose leading up to the game, and in obviously all the previews leading up to the game, and also on Channel 9 beforehand, they were saying that New South Wales really needed to grind out the first 10 or 20 minutes. If they let Queensland score, only let them in maybe for one try, and they couldn't do that. It seemed to me that it was a bit of a reverse of that first half, wasn't it, where New South Wales, they were very good in the last 20 minutes of the first half not to let Queensland score, but by then, even at 14-0, you knew it was going to be a tough ask for New South Wales to come back.
No, exactly right. New South Wales had to weather the initial storm. The first Queensland try by Thaiday was, relatively easy, really. It was a relatively easy try. They had all the ball. I think it was the first 3 or 4 penalties went Queensland's way, so they were camped on the line. When Boyd scored the second try to make it 14-0, even at that stage, even though we were 10 minutes into the game or 12 minutes into the game, I was sort of thinking game over. New South Wales had to score before half-time. They had some ball. They had some ball before half-time, but very poor kicking. Also, the passing just seemed to be out. Things just weren't clicking together, mate. They dropped a lot of ball. Poor kicking game. They changed the kicking game from the first match. In the first match, I don't know if you noticed there that they adopted the high kick. They were putting the ball up high, like high bombs, and they were rushing down onto Slater or Boyd, whoever got the ball. Well, that went out the window. I don't know why. I thought that was a very successful tactic in Origin 1, to put the ball up high and rush down onto Slater, to stop Slater's momentum from the back there. I thought it was a successful tactic, but they seem to have abandoned that for the game too. I don't know why.
All right, we'll talk about a couple of players in a moment. A bit later on, we'll look ahead to Origin 3 later on in the show. But, Steve, you're up in Queensland. It must have been fantastic for all the Queenslanders. They had a double victory that night, didn't they?
Yes, they did, Daniel. And there were plenty of people whinging about the delays on the telecast. I noticed that they delayed the kickoff as well to make way for Kevin Rudd, it seemed. But look, Queensland were dominant from the outset, and they did get some help from the refs, 50-50 decisions, and they appeared offside at times. But they didn't need that. They were rolling over New South Wales regardless. And Sam Thaiday running wide of the ruck early on, and the exploitation on the other side with the multiple overlaps appearing on Nathan Merritt's wing. And everyone says New South Wales, it was all telegraphed that Queensland were going to come out like this, and New South Wales saw it coming. I just wonder a little bit if that worked against them, and they were a little bit like deers caught in the spotlight early on, I thought.
Yeah, they were. Now, we'll look ahead at any changes we may make for State of Origin 3 in about half an hour's time, but I just want to mention a couple of people that have cop criticism, and probably fairly so. The first one is Nathan Merritt. Now, it's his first State of Origin game, and, he's an excellent player at NRL level. We saw him last night against the Raiders, how good he was, and he played well, but he wasn't good in State of Origin too. He was poor, and I'm not having a go at him because he is a good player, but he was poor, and surely, and there's another person I want to mention in a moment, but Rob wants to talk about Merritt for a second. Surely, if Jared Hayne is fit, either Jared Hayne just comes back on to the wing and they leave Dugan at fullback, who I thought was fairly good. But your take on Nathan Merritt, and then I want to mention the halfback as well.
No, well, listen, yes, Nathan Merritt was very badly exposed over there on the, the right wing there. But, Daly came out after the game and said that this was part of the New South Wales tactics to get Daly to rush in on, Merritt to rush in on Inglis to take him out of the game. And, of course, what Thurston did, he just cut Inglis out and went straight to Boyd. So, again, this was, I thought, poor tactics on behalf of New South Wales. If that was part of their defensive tactics, well, it obviously failed, along with their kicking game. They should have stuck with the kicking game they had in the first Origin, where they put the ball up high and stopped that thrust from the back from Slater.
You can see, and I'll mention Mitchell Pearce in a second, but Nathan, you can see, Greg Inglis, threatening player, brilliant player, but he ran over the top of not just Nathan Merritt, but a lot of New South Wales players on Wednesday night. We said last week that a key for Queensland was that Greg Inglis would get more ball, and he did, and he was probably one of the best players on the field. Your thoughts on Nathan Merritt? We know how good of a player he is, but he wasn't on form on Wednesday night.
Well, this isn't the first winger New South Wales have had problems with down that right-hand side. Over the past, going on 8 years now, we've had numerous people come in. They've been brilliant at club level. They've had James McManus, David Williams, Steve Turner, I think Michael Gordon from memory. They all got their chance at the wing, and neither of them have lived up to that. Now you can add Nathan Merritt to that list. Most people, South fans in particular, have whinged and bitched and pissed and moaned for Nathan Merritt to get in this side. He finally gets his chance after 12 years of being built up to be this great player. He let the state down. I think 3 of the tries went down that side. I think he was very poor. I don't think he'll ever play Origin again. In saying that, he was marking Inglis, who is a threat out there. You're defending at that side. Obviously, he's the man that you're going to defend well, and I think he's going to get the ball. But as Rob said, Thurston didn't even go to Inglis, went straight to Boyd, who was out there unmarked more times than not. And unfortunately, it doesn't look good for Nathan Merritt.
We'll talk more about who will come into the side for Nathan Merritt, if anyone does, a little later on. The other 2 people that have copped a bit of criticism on the halves, Rob, James Maloney and Mitchell Pearce. I'll exclude James Maloney out of this a bit because, he was okay without doing anything flashy. The kicking game from both of them were poor. But Mitchell Pearce, this has been a long-running thing for a lot of rugby league supporters now. We'll talk about the Pearce-Reynolds battle a little later on. Let's just focus on Pearce at the moment, though. He, in Game 1... wasn't the standout half. I think we all agree with that. James Maloney took control, and that's where probably Maloney really didn't get the chance to stand up. And you have to look at the side. The forward pack was monstered as well by the big Queensland forward pack. But the limited chances Mitchell Pearce had, he couldn't produce anything. The kicking game was dreadful. And one thing I noted late in that match, when Robbie Farah started taking over the kicking game for New South Wales, the kicking game was so much better than when Maloney or more so Pearce were kicking. What's your take on Mitchell Pearce? Obviously, I don't think they're going to drop him for Game 3. We'll talk about that later, but he's got to step up, surely.
Yes, well, no, it is sort of one of New South Wales' quandaries, the halfback position. Mitchell Pearce has been there now. This is his fourth series he's been there at halfback. Limited number of wins. Yes, his overall impact. Is he a match winner? Is he a match winner like Thurston? No. Is he a match winner like Cooper Cronk? No. His kicking game is not sort of like what it should be. New South Wales kicking game, there's just no pressure, no dropouts. It was atrocious compared to the first game. Why? Well, unless this was a change of tactics from Daly to stop the high bomb, or they just weren't in the field position to do it. They were under pressure. Maloney, of course, was under a lot of pressure. They were running at Maloney. Parker and Thaiday were running at Maloney the whole game, which obviously worked because it put him off his game. They can't change. I agree with you. I don't think they wouldn't want to put Reynolds in for such a high-pressure game. But, no, he's been disappointing over the course of his State of Origin career.
Nathan, just on Mitchell Pearce, you watch him for the Roosters as you do James Maloney every weekend. Now, one thing I have noticed about the Roosters this year, they're doing very well. They're in third they're in third position and they're going great. But you look at the kicking game for the Roosters this year, and that's been their one letdown. I think I heard Phil Gould on the State of Origin coverage saying that they've only forced like 12 line dropouts all year. They're going well, so they were not probably too worried about it at the moment. But come finals time, the Roosters might be in a bit of trouble. What did you make of the Hearts game on Wednesday night?
Well, I thought it was poor. We saw them not so much dominate the game in game one, but they sort of had more of an impact on the game. I suppose, as Rob mentioned, the bombing kicking game, giving the chasers time to get down there, and a bit of field position there that didn't come in the second game. And I thought they were very poor. Maloney, as you said, was targeted in defence. It obviously took a lot of effort out of him to make those tackles that Pearce didn't necessarily have to make. But when Pearce got the ball, he's too predictable in attack. I thought, even as you said at the Roosters, 9 times out of 10, their go-to attack is a bomb, and hoping that it bounces their way. There's very few grubbers, very few cross-field kicks. It's mostly just put up and hope you get the luck. And as you said, we do force the least line dropouts out of any team in the competition. And when you're taking these halves, the same halves that played the Roosters into an Origin game, it's a different arena. When they're playing for the Roosters, it's different. When they're playing for New South Wales, it's different again. So I think they do need to improve. I don't think Mitchell Pearce will be dropped.
It's 10
I think
o'clock.
The thing throughout Mitchell Pearce's career is he's been good, but he hasn't been overly brilliant through his whole career, the 8 years he's played at the Roosters. He's never made crucial mistakes at Origin that I haven't seen. He just doesn't have the brilliance of a Thurston or a Cronk. Like Thurston laid on all of Boyd's tries, and Pearce I don't think he's laid on many tries out of his whole career. He's a few here and there. That's about it. He won't be dropped, but they need to look at him for next year. He needs to improve.
Yeah, we'll talk about the whole Pearce and Reynolds thing a bit later on. It is interesting what Nathan says, though. He seems to come out every 5 or 6 games. He has this brilliant standout game, Mitchell Pearce, where you think, maybe he's going to control things from now on, but he just hasn't seemed to do it. Let's move on to what was probably the talking point of the game, aside from the Queensland win, was the in inverted commas the fight. Now, we saw these new rules. In fact, all of us were watching the under-20s game that the Tigers were playing last week, where we saw 4 people sin bin. Now, it was a lot worse than what we saw in State of Origin. Rob, I want to get your thoughts on it. I just tend to think the game is going completely soft. Look, I don't disagree with Trent Merrin being sin-binned. I think he probably would have been sin-binned either way, regardless of the new rules. But why was Brent Tate and Greg Bird sin-binned, and maybe to a lesser extent Justin Hodges? I mean, we're seeing instances in that game. We saw a shoulder charge last night in the South Canberra game that shouldn't have been a penalty at all, even though it was a shoulder charge, but it's a new rule. It's just ridiculous. Surely, we've got to have a right balance between keeping people happy, and we don't want violence or fights on the field, and keeping the game real, because that was just soft. 4 players sin-binned, only 1 really deserved to be sin-binned, and that was Trent Merrin.
No, if you ever get the chance, I think you should watch some of the old State of Origin games from the 80s and 90s, mate, and to watch those games and compare them to the modern game, well, there is a massive difference. I mean, everything went on in those games. Okay, there's a bit of a hullabaloo about it. It all blew over, and the game went on. I just think that there is a physical aspect to the game of rugby league, but at the moment, the administrators are just trying to legislate the physical aspect out of the game, and I think it's to the detriment of the game. That they're doing it. What happened on Wednesday night I thought was quite embarrassing, actually. It was embarrassing for the game. I know it might have been a knee-jerk reaction from David Smith to sort of come out with this blanket about punching and that sort of thing. The referees are there. They know what's going on. They know whether it deserves a sin bin or not. If it's a bit of they're just blowing off some steam. Leave it with the referees, I think, to determine what punishment, or if any punishment, should be handed out. Yeah,
it might be more of a topic for next week, but Nathan, your thoughts on what was happening in that fight? I mean, Trent Merrin, I think probably we all agree, and we'll get Steve's thoughts as well in a second, but we probably all agree that Trent Merrin probably deserved to get sin-binned, but surely no one else on the field really deserved to get sin-binned.
Well, you just said we don't like to see fights and biff on the field. Speak for yourself. I love it. State of Origin is the pinnacle of rugby league. People that are not necessarily fans of a team and don't watch the game week in, week out, watch Origin. And 9 times out of 10, they watch it because they know there's going to be a biff, there's going to be a stink on, and they're going to enjoy it. And there was. After Paul Gallen's stoush in the first game, there was most anticipated for this one because they knew there was something was going to happen, and they watched it in anticipation of that happening, and it happened. And it was ridiculous. They've brought in these new rules because it's a bad image for the game, and no one wants to see it, blah, 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 blah. And the referees, they're just doing what they're told to. The NRL has said, right, if they throw a punch, they're off. And they follow what they do. But it makes the game look like a joke. I thought that Trent Merrin, by going by these new rules, Trent Merrin deserved to be a bin. I also thought Justin Hodges, he come in, not as noticeable as Trent Merrin's, but he did come in with 2 swinging arms to Merrin. That's when Bird rushed in. But I think the binnings of Bird and Tate were ridiculous. I mean, Tate copped one flush on the cheek, and he got binned for that. Why should he get binned? It was ridiculous. Even if they didn't have these rules, I would have said a penalty to Queensland and play on. That's what Origin's about, the passion, the pride that these people play with. The referees have overkilled it, as well as the shoulder charge rule. The NRL has killed it. This game is going soft. They need to turn it around, otherwise they're going to lose fans and people won't watch.
Steve, I've got a good friend who, that sort of in the sort of line that Nathan was talking about, that aside, he doesn't watch any sport. He hates sport, which is fair enough. A lot of people don't like sport. If you look at the TV ratings, the majority of people actually don't watch sport. But he came to me and he heard about the Paul Gallen incident in Game 1, and he was saying that, it should be banned. And then he was saying, if you don't ban it, they should put rugby league in an MA rating for violence like they do with other violence. I thought that was a bit extreme, but that is sort of the extreme views that people who aren't followers of the sport are actually giving out, which makes the NRL think, we have to do something about this, when 95% of people probably just don't care.
Well, yeah. Well, they don't care or don't know, and really, we already knew this was going to happen this week. On the show, we were discussing it when there was an avalanche of outrage happening in the media over the Paul Gallen incident. And we suspected that someone will be sent off, and the referees would even it up. I'd like to, if it's all right, I'd like to make a comment on a headline in the Gold Coast Bulletin we had here last week in Queensland, and we recall there was an avalanche of outrage over the punches thrown by Paul Gallen on Nate Miles. Academics and politicians got involved. I saw on TV there were attempts to join the dots between some biff on the football field and violence in society. On Q&A, Mark Latham was the only one who made any sense, and that's saying something, when he said it happens on the football field, and he referred to Greg Dowling and the Kevin Tamati incident brawl in 1985, and there was no connection between incidents like this and violence in the streets, and Latham was the craziest one out of the lot of them on that show, but he made the most sense. He's a league supporter, and that gave him the credentials more than anyone else in that studio, which says something about the people who should steer clear of things they really know nothing about, and I for one can tell the difference between a football brawl and dropping bombs on a civilian population, and that's how bad. How people were exaggerating the whole issue, but the News Limited tabloids went to town on this, of course, and there was the usual Helen Lovejoy cries of please, won't someone please think of the children. The knee-jerk reactions being that fights on the football field have an adverse effect on children who look up to the sports people as their role models. These claims are usually made by people who have no kids of their own, or should be communicating with their own kids more, rather than trying to blame it on what they see on TV. Now, the rule of thumb here is that parents bring up their kids and teach them values, not Paul Gallen. And so the irony wasn't lost on me when the Gold Coast Bulletin, a Queensland News Limited publication, ran a front page spread in the lead up to Origin 2 with a picture of the Southport Tigers under 7s or under 8s rugby league side, and one particularly determined looking youngster pointing at the camera with the caption, "Hey Gallen, you want a piece of me?" The paper also had a poster lift out with a dartboard with Paul Gallen's head as the bullseye, and the headline, "Throw like a gal," with the subtitle, Get into a blue with our poster. And they're trying to encourage the kids to share this aggression with them. And it's quite hilarious for its hypocrisy. And listeners can have a look at, if they want to go and have a look at the headline on the Radio League Unlimited webpage at leagueunlimited.com/radio. That's leagueunlimited.com/radio. And you can click on the picture for a larger image. Of course, it's tabloid reporting. It'll be passed off as a joke, and on that point, tabloids are a joke. But the fact is, the media did have an influence on the subsequent sin binnings in Origin 2, and it is clearly a case of the tail wagging the dog. The News Limited grab for headlines and derision they show for the nature of the game was quite evident to me, and the league, and that is the New South Wales and the Queensland Rugby Leagues and the NRL, are the governing bodies of this event, not the tabloids or the broadcasters.
Yes.
Steve, I actually, just before we go to a break and Nathan wants to have a quick say, I actually watched that same episode of Q&A you're talking about. Found it very interesting that Malcolm Turnbull, who is also supposed to be a big rugby league fan and is represents somewhere in the eastern suburbs, said, well, basically that everyone should be sent off and sin bin and it should be all responsible and loving. Nathan, just quick. Sorry, go on, Steve.
No, that's right. And I'll talk. There were some similar comments on the forums about that, but we'll discuss that later.
Nathan, you just really quickly wanted to say something?
These morons at the NRL who make these rules, saying there's no shoulder charge, there's no biff, otherwise you get sent off. They need to take a good hard look at the bigger picture here. At the end of the day, do they want a clean image for the not a clean image, but do they want none of this and people not to watch, or do they want this and they want people watching? Because I think at the end of the day, they want rugby league to be the biggest sport that it can be. And if these things are happening, if they're going to ban this stuff and say, right, this can't happen, the things that the people want to see can't happen, then people are going to stop watching. People are going to stop, reading papers or doing whatever because they're ruining the stuff that they love. They're taking it out of the game and making it soft. And then, see why people hate soccer because it's soft. You very see these things in soccer, and now we're making it like not so much soccer, but we're making it a less of a contact sport, and people are they're gonna have a whinge that people aren't going to the games, people aren't watching the games, people aren't putting enough money into the game, and they need to wonder why. So they need to take a good hard look and realise that they're doing worse to the game than what they're doing good to it.
And yeah, I do agree with that. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll talk more about Origin in a little while, but right after this, we're going to come back and talk about South Sydney's good victory last night. We're back after this. This is A View from the Hill.